I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think anyone has an answer. It is important to know. Go ahead, sister. اتفضل. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Jazakallah khair, akhti. Yes. That is true. The only name in the Quran that Allah names Himself other than Allah as a proper name is Ar-Rahman. And this is a correct statement from the sister. May Allah bless her. That it's the only name in the Quran that's put on par with Allah. When it comes though to naming the surahs, quite often the ulama will say the names of the surah are not divine. Meaning that the names of the surah were actually chosen. Most ulama are of the opinion that they were actually chosen by the Sahaba. Right? That they were not necessarily 100% divinely inspired. Right? Now some ulama differ, they say no, many of the names were given by the Rasul ﷺ, and so therefore they are divinely inspired. But these surah are predominantly, the names come from something in the surah. And so Surah Ar-Rahman is named Ar-Rahman, many ulama say, predominantly because Ar-Rahman, Allam al-Quran. Allah is talking about Ar-Rahman in this surah. And so that's the only thing I can say about that. Wallahu a'lam. Yes, that's true. Many surahs have more than one. Do you know if Surah Ar-Rahman has a secondary name? Yeah. But that is true. There are plenty of surahs that have more than one name in the Quran. That is true. Any other questions? Nusi, you have a question? Go ahead. Yeah, this is a very common question. How do you know the difference between a punishment from Allah and a test from Allah? I don't know that I have a definitive answer for you. What I will tell you from what I've understood from all the times I've heard the ulama talk about this topic is that you can't know. But a few things that I know we can say. Number one, we are never in a position to declare that someone else is being punished by Allah. So I'll give you an example. A massive tsunami hits some village somewhere in Haiti. And we say, you know, the Haitians, they practice voodoo, and that's why Allah is sending the tsunami on them. What are you going to say when Indonesia gets hit with a tsunami and it's mostly Muslims that die? They're not doing voodoo. Right, so we are never to look at anything, or for example, let's make it more personal. Someone does something mean to you. This actually happened here in this masjid, or in Masjid Patterson. There were two families that were fighting. And unfortunately, one of the children of one of the families was born, unfortunately, with a defect at birth. And the other family said, see, this is a adab from Allah because of how unrighteous you are. Right? This is completely ugly and disgusting, and it's, who are you to declare that that someone else is definitively evil, that Allah is now going to punish them? So that's one thing I can say for sure. When you're talking about someone else, you're never in a position to say that that person or those people are definitely being punished. All right. Number two, what is far more important than whether or not the thing was meant to be a punishment or a test is really your reaction. And more often than not, your reaction will tell you whether this thing is a quote-unquote test or a punishment. Meaning, if something happens in your life that is difficult for you, and it causes you to remember Allah, come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and try your best to overcome it, then there's no way that's a punishment. That is definitely something Allah, it's not even a quote-unquote test. It's actually a ni'mah. Everything in this world is a test. It's actually a blessing, because it's something that actually produces a goodness in you. Right? On the flip side, Allah can give someone abundance of wealth, and it absolutely makes them the worst and most wretched human being on the planet. There's no way that that's a blessing. That's a punishment in and of itself. And Allah actually says this explicitly in the Quran when He tells the Prophet ﷺ, don't be enamored with the fact that these people, I gave them wealth and children and so on. I gave them that so that they can bury themselves with it on the Day of Judgment. Right, so far more important than whether or not it was intended to come into your life as a punishment or whatever, is you can tell more so from your reaction. If you react positively, this is a ni'mah in your life one way or the other. Right? And so there's no definitive answer. You can take something that you thought was a punishment and it becomes something beautiful. There's no way that's a punishment then. Right? And so there really is no way, as far as I've been able to tell, no way for you to ever know. You're better off just assuming everything is a test. Now I'll tell you where this gets very confusing and why a lot of people ask this question. Because this actually came up in my last khutbah in Patterson, not this past Friday, but the Friday before. I was talking about the story of the man with 2 gardens in Surah Al-Kahf. And part of what I mentioned, and I may give that same khutbah here next week, but part of what I mentioned was that so often Muslims look at the ummah and the state that it's in, and they say, you know what, we're in this state because we're so bad. Like the reason why the Muslim ummah is in such disarray and oppression is because Muslims are such horrible people. I mean, that's not a bad thing to look at, like to look at ourselves and say, what are we doing wrong? That's the right thing to do. But it's not actually appropriate to say that. Like in my opinion, you can't look at the ummah and say definitively the reason why these disgusting tyrants are ruling over us is because Muslims aren't praying the 5 daily prayers. What about all the Muslims that are praying the 5 daily prayers? What about all the Muslims who spend nights in tahajjud? What about all the dua being done? Right? What about, I gave the example in that khutbah of Gaza, right? If you meet people, the majority of people that I've ever known who are in Gaza are God-fearing, righteous people. They pray, they fast, they take their deen very seriously. You're trying to tell me that they're being bombed to death? For what reason? What are they doing? What do they even have the opportunity to do that's so sinful? What do they even have the opportunity to do that's so sinful? And so it becomes a very difficult thing. And so a lot of times this question comes out because people are wondering, are we in the state that we're in because we're being punished? And so it's not a bad thing for Muslims to look at them and say, to look at ourselves and say, what do we have to do differently to get the barakah of Allah in our lives, so that Allah gives us some good in this world? That's a positive thing. But to say definitively that it's a punishment, then you're saying essentially that there's no way out. This is going to be the state of Islam until the end of time. No, Muslims go through, the Prophet went through 15, 16, 18 years of real difficulty before he became a ruler. Are you telling me he was being punished for those 18 years? There's no way the Prophet was being punished. Right, so we never say definitively or declaratively about anyone else. We can never say that. And we're far better off about ourselves saying, this is an ibtila, how do we make it something beneficial for ourselves? I hope that answers the question. Any other? Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Yusuf. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead. What are some other examples that we can do in our day-to-day lives in pursuit of ihsan? Jazakallah khair. I tried to intersperse those in the middle of the talk, so I'm just going to recap some of them. First and foremost, and I say this especially to the brothers, only because I don't, alhamdulillah, we're not supposed to look at the sisters, so I don't look at them as much. But quite often, my brothers don't dress very well. And they don't groom themselves very well. I'm not talking about you guys. You guys all look magnificent, right? I don't know if some of you were here, but in one of the first sessions I gave after Ramadan, I spoke about one of the challenges for me in Ramadan was praying here in this masjid, in Taraweeh, and many brothers dressed in a way that their crack would show when they went into ruku' and sujood, right? That's a lack of ihsan. You should be dressing knowing, obviously, I'm going to be praying, right? Any day in my life, I'm going to be praying while I'm dressed this way. I should be dressed in a way that will cover my awrah at all times. But more than that, you should be groomed well. You should be. This is a prophetic sunnah. Groom yourself well. Make sure your hair is, you don't have to do with a crazy style. It's just styled nicely, well, groomed well. Make sure your beard is well groomed. Make sure you brush your teeth. You smell good, you look good. Dress well, dress respectfully. Right? This is the first thing that you can do with ihsan. Number 2, one of the more obvious ones, when you enter into salah, and this goes for any ibadah that you do, try your best to enter into it with a level of intentionality. I'm going in knowing that I'm going in to worship Allah, I'm going into a meeting with Allah. Number 3, remember that every single person you meet at any point in any day, you are really essentially dealing with Allah. And that's what I was saying about ihsan. You're seeing the signs of Allah in everything and everyone around you. And so technically speaking, you're removing yourself and the other person from the equation. I'm really here, I'm interacting with something Allah has put in my life. So I want to interact with it well. Right? But some of the other small things, drive safely, drive well. Don't be I'm a notorious, most of you don't know me that well, but those who do know me well, I'm a notoriously bad driver, right? Unfortunately, I try, but I'm just a bad driver. But try to drive safely and well. You try to make sure that when you come home to your family, no matter what you are, whether you're a son at home, you're a husband, you're a father, you're a wife, you're a sister, you're a daughter, you're a mother, try your best that when you come home, you are someone that your family likes to see. That you come home and your family's actually happy to have you home. Right? You go home, your father's happy, your mother's happy, your siblings are happy, your children are happy, your wife is happy. I want this person to be around me. If they don't want you around, you're doing something really unprophetic. When the Prophet ﷺ came home, everyone was ecstatic that he was around, and they never wanted him to leave. Right? I don't know if there's anything else I can add to that, but if anyone wants to add more, inshallah, they can add. Inshallah. Go ahead. That's a profound question. How can you use the religion to help you deal with stress in your life? So I mentioned a couple of these things in my talk, but Allah promises specifically to 2 characteristics in the Quran. Allah promises a reduced level of anxiety in this world. And you can translate anxiety as stress when the Quran talks about it. One is what we talked about today, ihsan. And the second one is taqwa. Right? Whoever has taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will remove from him or her their anxieties, and He will make a way out from them for every difficulty, and He will give them rizq from areas and ways that they never thought would come. Right? And so the first and foremost thing I would say is try your best to embody ihsan and taqwa in your life. Those are very general topics, like I discussed already. Ihsan is a very broad topic. I'll start to get a little bit more specific and pragmatic now. When it comes to the level of our intellect, I have always found it extremely comforting to know that Allah is in control of everything. And if I genuinely believe that, like if I really believe in Allah and I believe in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then everything that comes my way and happens to me can be the best thing for me if I react appropriately to it. And so I may get the exact opposite of what I want. Right? So I've known young men in this community, for example, who've tried to get a certain degree probably 3 or 4 or 5 times. And they kept failing. And I would ask them, have you done everything you can? Yes, wallahi, I've done everything. I locked myself away. I didn't see friends. I didn't play. I didn't go to any. I didn't see move. I did nothing but study. And I just can't pass this test. And I would tell them, wallahi, this is better for you. Allah does not want you to go down this road. It might be the exact opposite of what you want, but this is what Allah has planned for you, so don't worry. Yes, it's going to suck for a little bit. It's going to hurt. It's not going to feel good. It's not good to fail. No one likes failing. But ultimately, it's going to be better for you. Or you really want to marry someone, and you guys get to know each other, and you really like each other. But you know what? For whatever reason, the cultures of the parents don't mesh, and it's just not happening. Wallahi, it's better for you. There's something better that Allah has for you. You may not know what that, you may not even be in a position yet in your life to appreciate what that better thing is, but it's better for you. Or you did get married, and the relationship wasn't good. The relationship didn't work out, and it ends up in a divorce. Wallahi, the fact like that Allah, it was better for you to get married and get divorced than to never get married at all. It was better for you. It really was. And so knowing that Allah is really in control, I've always found it to be a very comforting thought. So I know, yes, sometimes things I don't want to have happen are going to happen, but it's really ultimately better for me. I just have to be patient with that sucky feeling that comes. I'll get even a little bit more pragmatic though. There are specific adhkar that we're told if you do them regularly, Allah will remove anxiety and stress and hardship from your life. One of them is to send salawat upon the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is why I always advise everyone who asks me, what should I do? Like, I don't know how to pray, I don't know the Quran, so on and so forth. One of the first things I tell them to do, start just doing a daily regimen of salawat on the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do 10, 15 in the morning, every morning, and then slowly increase them till you get to a few hundred, till you get to 1,000, to 1,000,000. And then just make it regular on your tongue. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Every good thing that's ever promised for any dhikr is promised for you sending salawat on the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and explicitly removing stress and anxiety and difficulty. Another one though, that gives you an explicit promise of removing stress and anxiety and difficulty is doing istighfar and tawbah damman, like doing it consistently and all the time. So get used to saying astaghfirullah al-azim wa atubu ilayh, astaghfirullah al-azim wa atubu ilayh, astaghfirullah al-azim wa atubu ilayh. Allah promises again, He'll remove anxiety, He'll remove grief, and He'll remove difficulty from your life. And then the third form of dhikr, I will say, although this is a very difficult one to live by, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a very beautiful promise in a hadith Qudsi. He says that whoever is distracted from making dua because they're in so much love of reciting Quran, I will give them according to the best dua that out of all human dua. Right? So if you get so in love and enamored with reading Quran, and every time you come to worship Allah, you just choose to read Quran, Allah says, don't worry. You forget to make dua, don't worry. I will give you the best dua that any human being has ever made. And I'll give it to you all. Right? So the three practical ways I'm giving you, make a lot of istighfar and tawbah, send a lot of salawat on the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and fall in love with the recitation of the Quran. Allah promises He'll take care of your grief and your anxiety. I hope that was helpful. Inshallah. Go ahead. Okay, there's no stupid question. Only stupid people. No, just joking. Yeah. I'm just joking. Is backbiting against celebrities haram, or is it okay because they're in a public domain? Okay. So that's where I was going to go with this question. Right? If you're discussing a public figure's public actions, as far as I know, so you got most of you who know me and have been to Q&As with me, you know I don't give halal haram answers. That's not my job. The only time I do is if I heard the exact question asked to one of our shuyukh, and I'll tell you this is what they say. All right. However, from what I've understood from Shaykh Qatanani and Shaykh Osama, Shaykh Yasir, and the other mashayikh I've been blessed to study with, if you're discussing a public figure's public actions, you are okay. Right? Meaning, you're sitting around the dinner table and you're talking about, look at how foolish Donald Trump looked today, and he did it publicly, you're perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong that you're doing there. However, it is, in my opinion, entirely un-Islamic or unbefitting, I should say, of someone who's trying to follow and emulate our beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam to read a gossip column or to worry about a gossip column. Right? So to worry about who's dating who's having whom's baby, what dress they're wearing, what suit they're wearing, what happened on this reality TV show, whether it's like appropriately backbiting or not, I think is secondary to the fact that as a person who takes himself seriously, why are you wasting your life and your brain cells on such asinine issues, right? So the Jenners of the world, I don't think are worth your time or your energy. But are they backbiting? I don't know if they would like technically constitute backbiting. Lastly, I will say this. I put a few stipulations there, right? A public figure who does things publicly, right? So I don't know that it's becoming, for example. Like there was a story several years ago, the Jets coach, Rex Ryan, when he was the head coach of the New York Jets, a story came out about what he likes to do in his bedroom with his wife, right? No, that was completely off limits, right? The fact that he's a public figure doesn't make it okay to talk about his private matters, right? So something being made public that that person didn't intend to be public is not something you should be engaging in too much. Again, unless it's like Donald Trump was caught, selling secrets to Russia. No, then this is a crime against his country. It's okay to speak about such things, right? But talking about their private affairs that we have no business or care of knowing, that's not really becoming of a believer. I hope that answers the question. Go ahead. That it becomes permissible to backbite? I don't know of like exceptions to the backbiting rule. I do know of 3 exceptions to lies, right? Like you can lie if you're trying to bring 2 people together who are fighting. You can lie. Wallahi, I can't remember the other 2 instances right now. So there's okay, hold on. No, there's. Okay, as far as I remember, and Ustadh Muhammad or Sheikh Yusuf, remind me if I'm remembering correctly. And to your enemies. Al-harbu khidra, maybe. All right, so he's saying to your wife, to your enemy. I don't remember it being to your wife. I remember an interpretation that this means as an example, right? Like you don't like your wife's cooking or you don't like your husband's cooking so that no one gets offended. And you say, no, your cooking is amazing. No, that's acceptable, right? Yes. Or, for example, bringing 2 brothers together. So, Ahmudi and Momus are fighting. And I go to Ahmed and I say, Muhammad Musa told me yesterday, man, he thinks you're the most amazing person in the world. And he was just telling me how awful he thinks he is. And I go to Momus and I say, Ahmed thought you were a really good looking guy and you're handsome and amazing and everything. And he was just telling me how ugly he thinks he looks. I'm allowed to lie in those ways, right? But backbiting, I don't know exceptions to the backbiting rule. And then the third thing that Sheikh Yusuf said was in war. When you're in war, you're allowed to deceive your enemy. We have to be very specific about what the Prophet says is acceptable. You can deceive your enemy. You cannot be treacherous in your dealings. Like meaning, you can't tell someone, I'm going to enter into an alliance with you and then betray that alliance. No. But what you can do is, for example, you're worried that the enemy is trying to get some reconnaissance on you. And so you let someone that you think is spying on you believe that you're going north when you're really going south. That is acceptable. It's not acceptable though to tell someone, okay, we're going to make a truce, and in reality I have no intention to give you a truce. I'm going to attack from the other side and kill you. No, that's completely haram. But backbiting, I don't know any exceptions to the rules of backbiting. Any other questions? Okay, nothing. Go ahead, sister. Yeah. Jazakallah khair. Again, another profound question that could take lectures on. I'll give some answer though. The question is, if you feel like your ego is getting out of hand and it's causing you, in this case she's specifically referencing, it's causing you to be extra critical of other people, what can you do to suppress it and hopefully even eradicate it? In general, when it comes to the nafs, the struggle of the nafs is a struggle of life. Struggling against your nafs in one area will always help you in struggling against your nafs in another area. Meaning this is why fasting is such a massive tool for self-discipline. Because withholding yourself from food and drink and copulation, when it's halal for you, is one of the most immediate ways to suppress the nafs. And if you learn how to suppress the nafs then you can learn how to suppress the nafs in any other time or place. It's also one of the reasons why physical activity and exercise, I think, are a very spiritual act, right? Because you have to force yourself to do something your nafs by default doesn't necessarily want to do. The problem is eventually your nafs starts to like it because maybe you start to look good and then you have to fight at that. But But that's in general. Right? Some specifics now when it comes to this. I would say number one, um, when I find myself going down that pattern in life, one of the first things I start to do is whenever I find myself criticizing someone else, I will stop and force myself to find three things, not just that that person is good at, but three things that the person is definitely better than me at. Right? And this can be anything. And sometimes it's a difficult thing because the person may really not be that good of a person. But B, you might be really upset and hurt, legitimately upset and hurt with that person. But when you force yourself, and then sometimes you'll find yourself getting really silly. You know what? That guy knows how to dress. I don't know how to dress that well. He dresses way better than me, right? But you force yourself to find good things about a person. You know what? This person treats me like garbage, but I notice when he's dealing with his parents, he's a wonderful son. Or I notice when he's at work, he's really good at what he does, right? So force yourself to list. I used to do 3 things that I know or I believe that person is better than me at. Number 2, I will then make a long dua for that person. Everything that I would ask for myself, I try to make dua for that person. So I want sincere intentions, I want good character, I want Allah to be happy with me, I want money, I want a good spouse, I want children, I want Jannah. I'm going to make that, all of those ideas, I'm going to make it for that person. And then number 3, I would then, and you have to be careful with this one, I'll explain why. I would then list out 3 things that I'm horrible at. And the reason why you have to be careful with that is that we are not a people who are to be self-deprecating. We're not a people who are supposed to put ourselves down. We're a people to be confident and comfortable and honest with ourselves. And if you're not good at knowing how to criticize yourself without destroying yourself, you have to be very careful with this third one, because you can really harm yourself if you get overly critical. You have to know how to come out of it. But if you find your nafs getting so self-enamored that you feel you can always judge other people, then force yourself to remind yourself, these are all the ways that I suck and things that I need to work on. Right? And wallahu alam, I found that worked for me in the past, and whenever I find myself going down that pathway, I try my best to do the same thing. I hope that helps, inshallah.
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
So the first one is, try to find 3 things that that person is better than you at. Number 2, make dua for that person. And number 3, try to list out 3 things that you suck at. Yeah. Go ahead, Ahmed.
We live in a political world where...
Just real quick, Wa'ad, are you okay with me continuing? Because it's getting late. Yeah. Go ahead.
We live in like a world where on the national scale, maybe the state scale, a lot of the political figures out there that are running for specific offices, you're not left with any good options. So the big argument comes out, it's the least of the worst, or the least of the evil out there. When it comes to supporting certain individuals, where you're saying, they're against Islam in this area, but they're the furthest we'll get. Where is there a line that we can draw as Muslim community and say there's no reason to get involved, because we shouldn't compromise, but you want to be able to say where you want to be a part of the solution? And in my view, unless you're involved in the process, you won't be able to change it. So where is there a line that we can draw and say there's no reason to support individuals where they're not being a good option? Like, for example, in the presidential race right now,
Yeah.
you may be able to look at every single candidate and say this person might come extremely far compared to where we've been in history, but they don't come nowhere near where we should be as Muslim community supporting someone.
So you're not a Bernie supporter? I'm just joking. That wasn't an endorsement. I'm not a Bernie supporter. No one take that. I'm just joking with Ahmed. Look, this is a question that goes well beyond me. I'm not a thought leader for the Muslim community in America. Wallahu alam, from what I've understood from people that I think are our thought leaders and our ulama in this country, I don't think that we benefit anything and we do any good by sitting on the sidelines. And when you're voting for a person, no person is going to match exactly what you want, right? And so you're always going to be forced with a little bit of a compromise and a choice, right? That's when you're voting for a person. Where we can draw clear lines is what our platform is and when we're voting for specific measures and protocols. All right, so I'll give you an example. We may, as a community, be forced to vote someone into power who's going to blow up innocent people. Right? We might be forced to do that because there's no one other than the aforementioned candidate. There's really no other person running who's ever run for this country in my lifetime who was not comfortable and even saw it as a good thing for America to go offensively and undermine and destroy other countries. And so if you're going to make that a red line with any person, you're never ever going to vote for anybody, right? But if we ever are in an option where we can vote for such a protocol, no, I will never vote to go into war in that way. Right? I would never. That's not something we're okay accepting. And on our platform, it's never okay, in my opinion, that we say we're actually okay with this thing. So yeah, you know what? There's some collateral damage in Afghanistan and Yemen and Syria. We do our drone strikes, innocent kids die. It's collateral damage. No, that's not acceptable. And by the way, just as a FYI, it's not acceptable when America does it. It's not acceptable when Turkey does it. It's not acceptable when Saudi does it. The fact that some politicians that we like or some Muslims seem to like do it doesn't make it okay. Right? Or for example, we may be forced, and we are forced in this country, you're going to eventually vote for someone who promotes certain lewd behaviors and lifestyles. Right? We might be forced to vote for them because none of them are going to stand against it. But I don't see any reason why a Muslim should ever have it as their platform that they're okay with that act. Right? Or that a Muslim would ever go out and vote for a proposition that promotes or pushes forward that act. In those cases, maybe it's better for you to just stay silent and stay on the sidelines. Right? I would vote against, but maybe you say voting against or coming out against is politically a problem. Fine. You want to keep quiet? Keep quiet. I don't see how any Muslim, including some of the Muslim politicians who are running now, some of whom I know personally and have a lot of love for, can stand up there and say these things are okay. Right? So when it comes to the propositions and the issues, I think there are clear lines to be drawn. When it comes to the people, wallahu alam, I don't think we really have any other option besides engaging, because not engaging is not a strategy. No problem. Any other questions? Okay. Bismillah. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum, jazakallah khair, Ustadh Zaied. Now we're going to have Salat al-Witr with Dr. Muhammad and wrap up inshallah.